Welcome, friends. Before we start, I need to ask you something. What would you do if you got trapped in an elevator with the most dangerous man in Seoul? And here's the twist. Instead of being terrified, you felt drawn to him, like magnetically pulled. I want to be sure you're ready for this ride. Today we're talking about Amaka. She's a Nigerian waitress working at one of Seoul's most exclusive rooftop restaurants. The kind of place where champagne costs more than her monthly rent. One night, she steps into an elevator. And so does he. Sungmin, a Korean Mafia boss whose name alone makes grown men shake. 10 minutes. That's all they had stuck in that elevator together. But those 10 minutes? They changed everything. This is a story about falling for the wrong person. About decisions that will haunt you either way. And about a connection so powerful it doesn't care about the consequences. This one will have you on the edge of your seat. I promise you that. So grab your snacks. Hit that subscribe button right now because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Let's go. The chrome elevator doors reflected Amaka's nervous expression as she stepped inside, balancing a silver tray with a single glass of whiskey. The 34th floor button glowed amber under her fingertip. The Lotus Sky restaurant hummed with its usual Friday night energy above her. But down here in the service elevator, silence wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. Her black vest and crisp white shirt felt too tight suddenly. She could feel sweat beginning to form at her temples. She'd been in Seoul for 8 months now, working double shifts at the Lotus Sky to send money back home to Lagos, where her mother was fighting cancer and her younger siblings needed school fees. Every one counted. Every tip mattered. Tonight, her manager Gina had specifically instructed her to deliver this drink to the private suite on the 34th floor. The guest had requested her specifically after seeing her serve his table last week. Gina's face had been pale when she gave the order, her hands shaking slightly as she handed over the tray. The problem was simple and terrifying. The 34th floor wasn't just any floor. It was Sungmin's floor. The entire level belonged to him, the man whose name people whispered in Seoul's underground circles, the Korean Mafia boss who controlled half the city's nightlife and all of its secrets. Amaka had seen him only once before, and that glimpse had been enough to send chills down her spine and something else, something she refused to name, heating her blood. Now, as the elevator began its ascent, her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. The elevator jolted to a stop at the 15th floor. The doors slid open with a soft chime, and he stepped inside. Sungmin. He was impossibly tall, dressed in a tailored black suit that probably cost more than Amaka made in 6 months. His dark hair was slicked back perfectly, revealing the intricate tattoos that crawled up his neck like dark vines. His face was sharp and beautiful in a way that seemed almost cruel, with high cheekbones and eyes so dark they looked black in the elevator's fluorescent light. But it was the scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the one that gave him a permanently dangerous look that made Amaka's breath catch in her throat. He didn't acknowledge her at first. He simply pressed the button for the 34th floor, which was already lit, and stood on the opposite side of the elevator, his presence filling the small space like smoke. His cologne reached her, something expensive and woody that made her head spin. The air between them crackled with tension so thick she could almost taste it. Amaka kept her eyes fixed on the numbers above the door. 16, 17, 18. You're the one who spilled wine on Woo Jin last week, Sungmin said suddenly, his voice deep and smooth, with just a hint of an accent that made her name sound like music when he said it. She turned to look at him, startled. I apologize to your associate, sir. It was an accident. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Woo Jin said you stood up to him. Called him rude when he grabbed your wrist. 22. 23. He was being inappropriate, Amaka said, lifting her chin despite the fear dancing in her stomach. I don't care who someone is. Respect is respect. This time, Sungmin did smile, and it transformed his entire face. For just a moment, he looked young, almost boyish, nothing like the monster the rumors painted him to be. I like you, he said simply. Before Amaka could respond, the elevator shuddered violently. The lights flickered once, twice, then went completely dark. The elevator jerked to a stop with a metallic screech that made Amaka's teeth hurt. The whiskey glass on her tray rattled, but didn't fall. Emergency lights clicked on, bathing everything in a dim red glow that made Sungmin's face look like it was carved from shadows. What's happening? Amaka whispered, though she already knew. They were stuck. Sungmin pulled out his phone, his jaw tightening as he looked at the screen. No signal. He moved to the emergency button and pressed it. Nothing happened. He pressed it again, harder this time. Still nothing. The backup power must have failed. Amaka's heart was racing now for entirely different reasons. She was trapped in an elevator with a mafia boss, and no one knew where they were. Her mind immediately went to the worst possibilities. Would he hurt her? Use her for some terrible purpose? She'd heard stories about what happened to people who crossed him. People who simply disappeared from Seoul's streets like they'd never existed. As if reading her thoughts, Sungmin turned to look at her, his expression softening in a way she didn't expect. I'm not going to hurt you, Amaka. She blinked. How do you know my name? I make it my business to know things, he said, leaning against the elevator wall with a casualness that seemed impossible given their situation. Amaka Okonkwo, 26 years old, came to Seoul 8 months ago from Lagos. Studied English literature at the University of Lagos, but couldn't find work that paid enough. Your mother has stage 3 breast cancer. You have 3 younger siblings, Chisholm, Emeka, and Adiz. You send home 80% of what you earn. Amaka felt her blood run cold. You investigated me? I investigate everyone who works in my buildings, Sungmin said. But you, I paid special attention to. Do you know why? She shook her head, unable to find her voice. He pushed off from the wall and moved closer, not threatening, just close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. Because you're the first person in 3 years who looked at me like I was human. Not a monster. Not a bank account. Not a weapon. Just a man. The vulnerability in his voice caught her completely off guard. This was not what she'd expected. Not at all. I don't understand, Amaka managed to say. When you served my table last week, Sungmin continued, you smiled at me. A real smile. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Everyone either fears me or wants something from me. But you just smiled and asked if I wanted extra ice in my whiskey. He laughed softly, bitterly. Such a small thing. But it's been haunting me for 7 days. Amaka felt something shift inside her chest, a wall she'd been carefully maintaining beginning to crack. I smiled because you said thank you, she said quietly. Most people don't. They stood there in the red-lit elevator, the world outside forgotten, as something neither of them could name began to bloom in the space between them. Tell me about Lagos, Sungmin said suddenly, settling down onto the elevator floor with his back against the wall. He patted the space beside him. We might be here a while. Talk to me. Amaka hesitated for only a moment before she set down her tray carefully and sat beside him, maintaining a respectful distance. What do you want to know? Everything, he said, and the hunger in that single word made her pulse quicken. So she told him about the chaos and beauty of Lagos, the way the city smelled like rain and frying plantains, how the markets exploded with color and sound. She told him about her mother's laugh, her father who died when she was 12, her siblings who called her every Sunday without fail. She told him about her dreams of becoming a writer, of publishing novels that would make her family proud. And as she spoke, Sungmin listened with an intensity that made her feel like she was the only person in the world. His questions were thoughtful, genuine. He wanted to know about Nigerian food, so she described jollof rice and egusi soup until his stomach actually growled, making them both laugh. He asked about her favorite books, and she lit up talking about Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie and Chinua Achebe. Your turn, Amaka said finally, emboldened by the strange intimacy of their situation. Tell me about you. The real you, not the rumors. Sungmin was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he began to speak, his voice low and careful, like he was handling something fragile. My name is Kong Sungmin. I'm 32 years old. I never wanted this life. He gestured vaguely at himself, at everything he represented. My father was the real boss. I was studying architecture at Seoul National University. I wanted to design buildings, create something beautiful. Then my father was killed, and suddenly I was in charge of an empire I never asked for. Why didn't you walk away? Amaka asked. Because they would have killed my mother and my sister, Sungmin said simply. This world doesn't let you walk away. You're in or you're dead. Those are the only choices. He turned to look at her, and the pain in his eyes was so raw it hurt to witness. I've done terrible things, Amaka. Things I can never take back. Things that would make you run from me if you knew. Try me, she whispered. But before he could respond, the elevator lurched violently. They both scrambled to their feet as the lights flickered back on, bright and harsh after the red glow. The elevator began moving again, climbing toward the 34th floor. Their 10 minutes were up. Sungmin's expression shifted, the vulnerable man disappearing behind the cold mask he showed the world. But when he looked at Amaka, his eyes were still soft, still searching. When these doors open, everything changes. Out there, I'm someone you should be afraid of. And in here? Amaka asked, her heart in her throat. In here, I'm just a man who wants to see you again. The elevator chimed. The doors began to open. And waiting on the other side was chaos. Wu Jin stood in the hallway, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead, his gun drawn. Behind him, Sungmin's private suite was in ruins, furniture overturned, windows shattered. 3 more of Sungmin's men were there, all armed, all looking like they'd been in a fight. Boss, Wu Jin said urgently, we have a situation. The Jade Dragons hit us 20 minutes ago. They thought you were upstairs. They were looking for you. Sungmin's entire demeanor changed in an instant. He was all business now, all cold calculation. Casualties. Minji took a bullet to the shoulder. Jiho's with her now. Taemin and Yunho chased them off, but they'll be back. It was only then that Wu Jin seemed to notice Amaka, still standing in the elevator clutching her tray. His eyes widened. The waitress. Boss, she can't be here. If they find out she was with you. I know. Sungmin cut him off sharply. He turned to Amaka, and for just a second, the mask slipped. She saw fear there, real and terrible. You need to leave. Now. Go back downstairs, tell Gina you delivered the drink, and forget this ever happened. But, Amaka, the way he said her name, desperate and commanding at once, stopped her protest. These people don't play games. If they think you mean something to me, they'll use you. They'll hurt you in ways you can't imagine. Please, go. Every instinct told her to listen, to run, to get as far away from this dangerous world as possible. But something stronger kept her rooted to the spot, staring at this man who'd shared pieces of his soul with her in the red-lit darkness. Will I see you again? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Sungmin's expression cracked, just for a moment. You shouldn't want to. That's not what I asked. He opened his mouth to respond, but Wu Jin interrupted, his voice urgent. Boss, we need to secure the floor. Now. Sungmin held Amaka's gaze for one more heartbeat, and in that moment, she saw everything he wasn't saying. Then he stepped back, and Wu Jin was ushering her into the service elevator, hitting the button for the ground floor. Stay safe, Sungmin called out as the doors began to close. Please, Amaka, stay safe. The elevator descended, taking her away from him, from the danger, from the impossible connection they'd forged. Amaka's hands were shaking so badly the empty whiskey glass rattled on the tray. Her mind was racing, trying to process everything that had happened in those 10 minutes. 10 minutes that felt like a lifetime. 10 minutes that had changed everything. When she reached the ground floor and stepped out, Gina was waiting, her face pale and worried. Amaka, thank God. We lost power for a few minutes. Where were you? Stuck in the elevator, Amaka managed to say. But I'm fine. Gina grabbed her arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Did you see anyone? Hear anything? No, Amaka lied smoothly. It was just me in there. Dark and scary, but nothing happened. Gina studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Go home. Your shift is over. And Amaka, don't come back tomorrow. Take a few days off. Paid leave. The way Gina said it made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. This was a warning. Amaka gathered her things and left the Lotus Sky restaurant, stepping out into Seoul's neon-bright night. The city pulsed around her with its usual energy, but everything felt different now. She felt different now. She walked to the subway station in a daze, Sungmin's words echoing in her head. I'm just a man who wants to see you again. She shouldn't want to see him again. She knew that. He was dangerous, involved in things that could get her killed. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was the vulnerability in his face, the hunger in his voice when he said everything. The way he'd listened to her stories like they mattered. The next 3 days passed in a strange blur. Amaka stayed in her tiny studio apartment in Itaewon, unable to shake the feeling that she was waiting for something. Her roommate Yuna, a Korean nursing student, kept asking if she was okay, but Amaka didn't know how to explain any of it. On the 4th day, Gina called. You can come back to work tomorrow. Everything's settled down. What happened? Amaka asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Gang stuff. Nothing that concerns us. Just stay away from the private floors, okay? Stick to the main dining room. That night, Amaka lay in bed staring at the ceiling, telling herself this was for the best. She would go back to work, keep her head down, send money home to her family, and forget about dark-eyed men with wounded souls and dangerous secrets. Then her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at Namsan Tower. Tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Come alone. Please. S. Amaka stared at the message, her heart racing. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was everything she should run from. She texted back. I'll be there. The next evening, Amaka stood at the base of Namsan Tower, Seoul's iconic landmark rising above her like a needle piercing the sky. The observation deck glowed at the top, and hundreds of love locks hung on the fences around her, each one a promise made by couples who believed in forever. She'd changed 3 times before leaving her apartment, finally settling on a simple black dress and denim jacket. She'd told Eunice she was meeting a friend, which wasn't exactly a lie, but wasn't exactly the truth either. You came. Amaka spun around. Sungmin stood a few feet away, dressed more casually than she'd ever seen him, in dark jeans and a black sweater. Without the suit, he looked younger, more approachable. But his eyes held the same intensity that had haunted her dreams for days. I almost didn't, she admitted. I wouldn't have blamed you. He moved closer, stopping just within arm's reach. I shouldn't have asked you to come. This is selfish of me. Then why did you? Because I can't stop thinking about you, Sungmin said, the words raw and honest. For 4 days I've tried. I've told myself 100 reasons why I should leave you alone, why getting close to you is the worst thing I could do. But I can't seem to listen. Amaka felt her breath catch. I can't stop thinking about you either. Something fierce and tender flashed across his face. He held out his hand. Walk with me. She took it, and the moment their fingers intertwined, she felt that same electric connection from the elevator. They walked up the path toward the tower, neither of them speaking at first, just existing in each other's presence. Tell me this is crazy, Amaka finally said. Tell me all the reasons this can't work. You're not part of my world, Sungmin began, his thumb rubbing circles on the back of her hand. You're innocent good. Being with me puts a target on your back. The jade dragons who attacked last week? They're just one of many enemies I have. My life is violence and secrets and moral compromises. You deserve so much better than anything I could offer you. Are you done? He blinked, surprised. What? Are you done listing all the reasons? Amaka stopped walking and turned to face him. Because I've thought of all those things too. I've thought about how dangerous this is, how different our worlds are, how this probably ends badly. But here's what I keep coming back to. In that elevator, for 10 minutes, I felt more seen and understood than I have in my entire time in Korea. Maybe in my entire life. And I think you felt the same way. I did, Sungmin whispered. God help me, I did. So maybe instead of listing all the reasons this can't work, we figure out if there's any way it can. He pulled her closer, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek. You're either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both, Amaka said with a soft laugh. I can't promise you normal, Sungmin said seriously. I can't take you to regular restaurants or introduce you to my associates. I can't post pictures of us or make this public. The moment people know you matter to me, you become a weapon they can use against me. Then we'll be careful, Amaka said. We'll figure it out as we go. You're really willing to try this? Knowing what I am, what I've done. She looked into his eyes, saw the hope and fear warring there, and made her choice. Tell me something. That dream you had about being an architect, designing buildings. Do you still want that? The question seemed to catch him off guard. I don't know. I haven't let myself think about it in years. Start thinking about it again, Amaka said firmly. Because the man I met in that elevator, the one who listened to my stories and shared his dreams, that's who you really are. The rest, that's just what you had to become to survive. But it doesn't have to be forever. Sungmin stared at her like she'd said something revolutionary, something he'd never dared to believe. Then slowly he leaned in. His lips brushed against hers, soft and questioning, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she kissed him back, rising up on her toes, her hands fisting in his sweater. The kiss deepened, becoming something urgent and desperate, like they were both drowning and had finally found air. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sungmin rested his forehead against hers. This is going to be complicated. I know. And dangerous. I know that too. And probably the stupidest thing either of us has ever done. Amaka laughed, the sound bright in the cool night air. Definitely the stupidest. He kissed her again, softer this time, tender and full of promise. When he pulled back, he kept her hand firmly in his. Come on. I want to show you something. They rode the elevator up to the observation deck, and this time, the small space felt magical instead of confining. Sungmin kept her hand in his the entire ride, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm that made her shiver. At the top, Seoul spread out below them like a sea of lights, beautiful and endless. Sungmin led her to a quiet corner away from the other tourists and pulled out a small lock from his pocket. I bought this on the way here, he said, almost shy. I know it's cheesy, but I wanted. He trailed off, looking uncertain for the first time since she'd known him. You wanted to make a promise, Amaka finished for him, her heart swelling. Yeah, he handed her a marker. Will you write our names? With shaking hands, Amaka wrote their names on the lock in careful letters. Sungmin and Amaka. Then she handed it back to him. They walked to the fence where thousands of other locks hung, each one a testament to love and hope. Sungmin clicked their lock in place next to all the others, then threw the key as far as he could into the night. There, he said, turning back to her. Now it's real. Now it's real, Amaka echoed. They spent the next hour up there, talking and laughing, stealing kisses when no one was looking. Sungmin told her about his sister, Minji, who was recovering well from her gunshot wound. He told her about Woo Jin, who despite his rough exterior was actually a softie who cried at romantic movies. He told her about his mother, who still lived in Busan and who he visited once a month in secret. Amaka told him about her plans to start writing again, about the novel she'd been afraid to work on. She told him about missing Lagos, but also finding unexpected beauty in Seoul. She told him about her fear of never being enough, never doing enough for her family. You're more than enough, Sungmin said fiercely. You're everything. As they rode the elevator back down, reality began to creep in. They couldn't leave together. They couldn't be seen together. The magic of the tower had to end when they hit the ground. How do we do this? Amaka asked as they lingered near the entrance, neither wanting to be the first to leave. Carefully, Sungmin said. I'll get you a new phone, a secure one. We'll figure out safe places to meet. And Amaka, he cupped her face in both his hands. If at any point this becomes too much, if you want out, you just tell me. No questions, no judgments. I'll make sure you're protected and we'll end it clean. Promise me you'll do that if you need to. I promise, she said. But I'm not going anywhere. God, I hope not. He kissed her forehead, her nose, finally her lips. I'll contact you in 3 days. There's something I need to handle first, but then we'll figure out a better system. 3 days, Amaka agreed. They parted ways reluctantly, Sungmin disappearing into the night in one direction, while Amaka headed toward the subway in another. She rode home in a daze, touching her lips where he'd kissed her, hardly believing any of this was real. 3 days came and went with no word. Then 4. Then 5. Amaka tried not to panic. He'd said he had something to handle. Maybe it was taking longer than expected. Maybe he was being extra careful. But by the 6th day, fear had fully set in. What if something had happened to him? What if the Jade Dragons had come back? What if he'd changed his mind and decided this was too dangerous after all? On the 7th day, Yuna came home from her nursing shift with a worried expression. Amaka, there's a man downstairs asking for you. He says his name is Woo Jin. Amaka's blood ran cold. She ran downstairs to find Woo Jin waiting by the building entrance, looking uncomfortable in the civilian neighborhood. When he saw her, his expression was grim. Is he okay? Amaka asked immediately. Is Sungmin okay? He's alive, Woo Jin said. But there's been a development. He sent me to bring you somewhere safe. Will you come with me? Every instinct screamed that getting into a car with a Mafia enforcer was a terrible idea. But the fear in her chest for Sungmin was stronger than any sense of self-preservation. Take me to him. Woo Jin led her to a black car parked down the street. The drive took 40 minutes, heading out of the main city into an area Amaka didn't recognize. They eventually pulled up to a modern house tucked away behind high walls and security gates. Inside, the house was beautiful but lived in, nothing like the cold luxury Amaka had expected. Woo Jin led her to a living room where Sungmin sat on a couch, his head in his hands. When he heard them enter, he looked up, and the relief on his face was so profound it hurt to see. Amaka. He stood, crossing the room in 3 long strides. Thank God. Are you okay? Has anyone approached you? Followed you? I'm fine, she said, confused. What's going on? Why didn't you contact me? Sungmin ran a hand through his hair, and she noticed for the first time how exhausted he looked. Sit down, please. I need to tell you something. They sat side by side on the couch, and Sungmin took both her hands in his. The Jade Dragon's attack wasn't random. They knew I'd be at the restaurant that night. Someone on the inside tipped them off. A traitor, Amaka whispered. We spent the last week rooting them out. It was one of my father's old lieutenants, a man named Taemin. He'd been working with the Jade Dragons for months, feeding them information. Sungmin's jaw tightened. He knew about you, Amaka. He saw us on the elevator security footage. Fear spiked through her. What does that mean? It means the Jade Dragons know you exist. They know you were with me when we were stuck. Taemin told them I requested you specifically for that drink delivery. Sungmin's hands tightened on hers. They think you're important to me, which means they'll come after you to get to me. The room seemed to tilt. I don't understand. How can I be important to you? We've only met twice. But they don't know that, Sungmin said urgently. All they know is that I've never requested a specific staff member before, that we were alone together for 10 minutes, and that I've been distracted ever since. It's enough for them to make assumptions. So what do we do? This was the moment. Amaka could see it in Sungmin's eyes, the internal war he was fighting. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be for him to end this now. To cut her loose and let her disappear back into her normal life. They barely knew each other. It would be easy. But instead, he said, I'm getting you out of Korea. What? I have contacts. I can get you on a flight to Lagos tomorrow with enough money to cover your mother's treatment and your siblings' education for the next 10 years. You'll be safe. Your family will be taken care of. And the Jade Dragons will have no reason to follow you. Amaka pulled her hands from his, standing up. You want me to leave? I want you to be alive. Sungmin stood too, his voice breaking. Don't you understand? These people will torture you to get information about me. They'll use you as leverage. He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. I can't let that happen to you. Not for something that's barely even started. Not when you can still walk away clean. But I don't want to walk away, Amaka said, tears streaming down her face. I don't want to go back to Lagos and spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been. Yes, we barely know each other. Yes, this is crazy and dangerous. But Sungmin, in that elevator, in that moment, I felt something I've never felt before. And I think you did too. I did, he said hoarsely. I do. That's why I'm trying to protect you. Then protect me here, Amaka said, moving back toward him. Find another way. You're smart. You're resourceful. You control half of Seoul's underground. There has to be another option besides sending me away. And if there isn't, if the only way to keep you safe is to let you go. Amaka took his face in her hands, making him look at her. Then I'd rather have a short time with you than a long life wondering what we could have been. You don't mean that. I absolutely mean it. She kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it. When she pulled back, she saw tears in his eyes. I'm not asking you to choose between my safety and your world. I'm asking you to let me choose. And I choose you. I choose this. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Sungmin kissed her desperately, like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. You're sure? Because once we go down this path, there's no turning back. I've never been more sure of anything. He let out a shaky breath, then pulled out his phone. Wu Jing, call Yunho and Jiho. We're going with Plan B. Over the next hour, Sungmin explained Plan B. Instead of sending Amaka away, they'd fake her death. A car accident, tragic and convincing, with a body that would pass initial inspection. The Jade Dragons would think she was gone, eliminating their reason to hunt her. Meanwhile, Amaka would be given a new identity and would live in this safe house under protection until Sungmin could eliminate the Jade Dragon threat permanently. How long will that take? Amaka asked. Weeks. Maybe months, Sungmin admitted. It won't be easy. You'll be isolated here, unable to contact your family or friends. They'll think you're dead too. It's the only way to sell it. Can't I tell them the truth? My mother, at least. Sungmin's expression was pained. If your family knows you're alive, they'll act differently. The Jade Dragons watch everything. One wrong word, one slip up, and they'll know. I'm sorry, Amaka. I know what I'm asking you to give up. Amaka thought about her mother, her siblings, Yuna. They would grieve for her. They would suffer thinking she was gone. But they would be safe. And eventually, when this was over, she could come